Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Scuttler's Thoughts. This week we're going to be talking about Worlds 2020 semifinals. We're going to be talking about Bjergsen leaving TSM and officially announcing his retirement as a pro player. And we're going to be talking about my initial thoughts on 10.22 and what I'd like to see going forward into the next patch. Alright, so we're going to start with Worlds 2020 semifinals. So my favorite team in this year's Worlds tournament is DAMWON Gaming. They have been my favorite team since last year, and I've been a big supporter of them since they first debuted in LCK. And I am very impressed so far with how they've grown and how consistent they've been. I'm very pleased that they are not only a talented group in terms of the micro and in terms of individual player skill, but they're also very good at managing their macro and filling out the roles that they need to be playing in a very ideal way. In a lot of ways, they're almost like a perfect team. They're definitely the kind of League of Legends pro team that you want to see playing at this international level. I think their match with G2 went about as expected. I was a little bit scared going into the match because I thought that G2 had a lot of potential to show up. As you guys know, there's this meme that goes around regarding Caps. And if he does well, it's claps. If he does poorly, it's craps. This time around, he did play pretty well for the most part, but there's only so much you can do when your entire team is outclassed. Everyone knows that they have a bit of a rivalry going on between the two teams, and that DAMWON really wanted to get their revenge on G2 based on a past Worlds show, or not Worlds, but an international match showing. So I think a lot of people weren't really sure which direction the match was going to go this time around because DAMWON had lost in the past, and G2 is known for being a very volatile team. But clearly DAMWON was able to maintain a more consistent showing. They didn't really falter in their sturdiness overall, so that was really good to see, and I am really happy to see that DAMWON has made it out successfully of the knockout stage, and now they are very much primed to almost win Worlds. I'm not really super familiar with Suning. I was very surprised by the fact that they were able to beat Top Esports, especially since Top Esports was the favorite of this tournament going in. I was almost 100% sure that the finals would be Top Esports versus DAMWON. So now that we're presented with this sort of unexpected situation, I don't really know what to make of it, and I'm excited to see what is coming. I think that Karsa still did very well. Karsa has been a big pillar and a large reason for Top Esports success, but there's only so much you can do as a single player. Overall, I was pretty surprised by Suning's performance. I wasn't expecting much from them since they were the 4th seed coming out of LPL. There are better teams in the LPL that weren't doing very well overall. So for them to come out here and suddenly beat the first seed team is pretty impressive, to say the least. Closing out my thoughts on Worlds 2020, I'm definitely very excited to see DAMWON in the finals, but I am a little bit disappointed that Top Esports aren't their opponents. That being said, Suning versus DAMWON Gaming is shaping up to be a pretty exciting match, so I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it's a close series. Both teams are known to be pretty sturdy. Suning does have a bit of variability in their performance. Sometimes they perform very well, sometimes they show up and they stomp, but a lot of the times they're a little bit lackluster, so we're just gonna have to see which Suning we get in the finals. Moving on to our next topic, I wanted to talk about Bjergsen leaving TSM as a pro player. I think it's definitely very surprising news, but at the same time it almost felt like it had been a long time coming. Bjergsen has kind of displayed a sense of fatigue as a pro player. This was made clear in his announcement video, actually, that he had been thinking about this even during the spring split. So it's definitely been in his mind for the past couple of years, I'm sure, or at least the past year. And it's a bit sad, I suppose, since even though he did very well as in LCS, as an NA mid laner, you know, he's won a decent number of championship titles. He hasn't really been able to convert this to an international title in any way. In Worlds, TSM hasn't historically performed very well. They don't really do well in MSI either, if they even make it to MSI or Worlds, right? And I think part of this was due to his general team synergy, but also maybe he just doesn't do very well in converting the pressure when it comes to overseas games. Maybe he feels like he has to do too much and then he ends up doing too little because of the stakes. I think that it's pretty fitting that he's transitioning into the head coach role. It seems like a pretty natural change. He's always had this sort of influence in TSM as this sort of figurehead, decision maker, a big like pillar, and this is demonstrated obviously since he is part owner of TSM. I'm not really sure how well he'll do as a head coach, especially since from what I understand, he didn't always have the best chemistry with his team, especially when it came to more hot-headed players like Doublelift, who would kind of do whatever they wanted. And as a head coach, you need to be able to sort of handle these sorts of players and, you know, make sure they behave in line with what the team is expected to do. Regardless of how he performs, I think that this is the right move for him, and I'm excited to see what he ends up doing. It's hard to say who will be filling in for TSM's mid lane. There's not a lot of NA talent to go around, and Bjergsen was considered the best in North America. It's not just in terms of talent, it's also the fact that he had a lot of influence on the team as well as NA as a region, and he was a big part of how TSM operated its team as a whole. If you've heard of like Bjergsen and his 4 wards, that old meme, you know, I think that you have like a good understanding of how TSM approached games in general. They were very much focused around Bjergsen and enable Bjergsen's sort of play style for the most part. If I had to guess, I don't think that a replacement will be coming from NA, but there is also the potential that like a TSM Academy player will be stepping up. But it's definitely hard to say if he'll be able to fill Bjergsen's shoes because they are very big. And moving on to the last bit of Scuttler's thoughts, we're going to be talking about TFT's 10.22 patch. This patch is coming at a pretty good time. People have been kind of settling into a pretty like annoying sort of meta. I think that Luden's Echo in particular has made for very troublesome units and very frustrating compositions to deal with. The item is definitely a little bit too strong considering how many units in the game have sort of CC tied to their spell cast. And it's not just Nami with her 2 Luden's Echoes, right? You could put a Luden's Echo on Teemo or Riven and they'll do a whole bunch of damage. And it's not just like single target damage, it's splash damage, so it's a bit of a big deal. And we saw how annoying team-wide damage is as a whole with like Spirit Bomb Ahri and with the Static Shiv Warwicks. I personally don't think it's super healthy as a whole, but obviously people like seeing entire teams nuked and it's fun to run these comps. And sometimes you do need these sorts of high damage, high AoE team comps to deal with certain teams that just can't be dealt with otherwise. But I'm glad that Luden's Echo is being nerfed. I'm glad that certain units like Lee Sin, who are just super annoying and they knock away like super strong units for nothing, I'm glad that they are going away. I think that it's pretty exciting that a lot of underwhelming traits and units are being buffed. I think that Vi and Dazzlers have been underrated for quite some time now, and I'm glad that they are getting a chance to shine. I also really like Cultists, I like Keepers, and I like the fact that their Chosens are being buffed. Although in regards to Keepers, I think it's a little bit concerning because if you were to get a really good unit like a Chosen Cannon Keeper or like a Chosen Keeper Ribbon, they would be just exceptionally strong on their own, and I don't know how healthy that would be. Yeah, but we'll see. Perhaps these changes won't really affect the meta too much. There's a good chance that a lot of the things that are strong right now, like sharpshooters, will be strong going forward as well. And then this brings me to my next topic, which is about just meta in general in TFT. I think that it's a little bit frustrating to see players run the same thing even at the detriment of their own success. I wish that TFT players were just a little bit more creative as a whole. It's really tiring to see the same units being, rushed to 3-star. It's really tiring to see just the same things over and over again. You rarely ever see like a Yasuo running different items besides like Infinity Edge, Guardian Angel, QSS, stuff like that. It's really rare these days to see a Nami without double Ludens and Quicksilver. I think it's always interesting to see new ideas that actually have a potential to work and succeed, and I think that TFT provides players a lot of tools for them to be able to create these sorts of solutions. So it is a little bit disappointing to see that people aren't being a little more creative in what they're doing. I know that there are a lot of players even at high elo who are very good at flexing, who are very good at being, who are very good at adapting to new situations, who do use their heads and realize that optimal builds may not necessarily be optimal for the situations they're put in. So yeah, going back to the patch, I think that buffs to weaker, more understated parts of the game are generally healthier overall. I think a good example of this is the fact that Double Bubble Nami was strong before, but it wasn't necessarily as oppressive as it used to be before 10.21b. No one was running carry Nami comps because it was, meta. People would run it because they thought it was like fun to see units just CC'd forever. So yeah, I think that when you do nerf very oppressive things on the strong side of things, and you do buff things that have potential to be strong but just aren't being used by players very often, that it creates a lot of space for flexibility and creativity. And I think that's really important because you're playing this game that's strategically focused, but you're just running the same things as everybody else. So after a certain point, people are going to see through that, and people are going to know how to counter it, and people are going to know how to abuse it. Or maybe you'll just run into a lobby where everybody's running the same thing, and in which case none of you guys are going to get optimal builds, and that's just not fun. I think that too many players are too obsessed with this idea of winning and grinding and gaining LP that they forget that, TFT it's like a lighthearted, fun sort of game, right? It's a game that rewards ingenuity and creativity and flexibility, but a lot of people don't really see that. And I think that's a little bit sad. After all, this game is supposed to be fun, right? But I guess winning's fun too. So pick your poison, I guess. And that about wraps up my thoughts for this week's I almost called it a podcast because I guess it kind of is. It's a little short to be a podcast. If you haven't already, please check out this week's episode of the Scuttler's Report. It went up yesterday, and I talked about a lot of the things that were mentioned in today's Scuttler's Thoughts. If you enjoyed today's talk, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more weekly content. I do put out new Scuttler's Reports every Tuesday morning, Pacific time, PDT, whatever. And Scuttler's Thoughts come out the following Wednesday morning, PDT. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.